seated next to a Confederate. And they could hear them but not see them. And they were all exposed to increasing levels of shock. Okay, and ever so they're shocked. Okay, what's the pain? When they increase the voltage, okay, shock, how much pain do you feel now? And okay, this is what psychologists do for a living. Okay, and then there were 4 conditions. I want to point out just the 2 main conditions. There were 2 main primary conditions, and 2 that were there just to eliminate alternative explanations. So the main condition here is one was interactive tolerant modeling. This is where the Confederate, both of them declared their ratings after each shock, so they said what their ratings were. But the model reported the Confederate always reported her ratings as 75% of the participants' ratings. So in other words, the model, the Confederate, always showed tolerance to the pain, higher levels of tolerance to the pain. And in the both silent condition, they just rated the amount of pain they felt. Yeah, and that was it. Okay, so what happened? I'm glad this showed up. Okay, so this is the effect. So what I've done here is I've drawn these little gray lines to make this easier to kind of get the idea. So the vertical axis is mean reported pain on a scale of 0 to 10. So for people in the silent condition, they only needed 3 milliamps of shock to reach a reported pain level of 5. But in the tolerant condition, where they had a tolerant model, they could take intensities all the way up to 8 before they rated a 5 on the mean reported pain. So they became much more tolerant. Just having another person demonstrate tolerance meant that they could actually go. And now this was not conjecture. They were actually receiving these shocks. So even if they were being they were trying to show off or be stoic or whatever, that's probably unlikely as an explanation. So it can be very powerful. It can affect how much pain you take. All right, and then finally, I want to turn my attention to social pain. As Professor McDonald pointed out, being socially excluded feels awful, feels terrible. There's no question that it's rotten. But it actually hurts. There's actually a pain associated with it. And a study done by Professor McDonald and Mark Leary, they found that people tend to use terms that are physical injury-like to describe the pain associated with social pain. Broken-hearted, hurt, wounded, heartbroken. And all these terms are kind of based or grounded in the body, in the physical realm. So, if physical pain if physical injury, can lead to physical pain, then it's reasonable to suggest that social injury might lead to social pain. So the apparent similarities between social and physical pain, I think, may be more than linguistic convenience. There actually appears to be some evidence that both social and physical pain rely on similar neural and biochemical mediators. How much time do I have?
45 minutes.
Oh, no, I won't. I know, it won't be 45 minutes. Okay. So one of the pioneers in this area was Jack Panksepp, who found he found that morphine seemed to dull social pain. What he did was he did a number of studies in the 70s and 80s, and what he did was he injected morphine into guinea pigs, and he found that the morphine reduced the cries, the distress vocalizations of the guinea pigs that were separated from their mothers. So he figured that, well, gee, if here's morphine, something that is established as being a drug that modulates physical pain. If this can also modulate social pain, there may very well be some overlap there, biochemically, neurologically. So this was kind of the first little bit of evidence that social and physical pain are related. They overlap to some degree. All right. So, one of the first studies that used imaging, the very sexy functional magnetic resonance imaging stuff. Again, they use this cyber ball, and they have participants play a game of cyber ball under 3 conditions. This was within subjects, so that means that all participants experience all of these conditions. Okay, so they either had, they had all 3 conditions. So they had exclusion due to technical difficulty. So they told the participants that they would not be able to be involved in this game due to some technical difficulty. Because these 2 other players were supposedly some other place in a different city, and there were network problems, and they couldn't participate. Then it turns out that the network came back up, and they were able to participate, and they played, and they experienced inclusion. And finally, they experienced exclusion due to rejection by others. So they were just playing back and forth, and then suddenly they were rejected. Okay, so one of those. So they experienced all of those. So what did they find? They found that there was greater activity in this DACC area of the brain, dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, and 2 regions of the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex during exclusion and during inclusion. They also found that the stress was positively correlated with the ACC activity and negatively correlated with the RBF-PFC activity. So the finding that there was greater activity during exclusion compared to inclusion was very important. Greater activity in the DACC was important because DACC is, as I mentioned earlier, is perhaps one of the most reliably linked with physical pain. Okay, and the fact that the stress was positively correlated with ACC, negatively correlated with RBPFC, suggests that what was happening is that the prefrontal cortex is like the front of the frontal part of the brain, and this is kind of the brain that does all the self-regulating. This is the part of the brain that says you want that donut, but you're not going to eat it, okay, because you're going to get fat. That's the part of the brain that does that. Okay, and so the greater was the activity of your self-regulating part of the brain, the lower was your activity in the pain part of the brain. Okay? And the fact that they saw this pattern of activity in response to a social pain experience, a social exclusion experience, and the fact that that activity overlaps a great deal with physical pain, the type of activity you see when people are experiencing physical pain, was a little bit of evidence. There's lots of weaknesses with this study, but it was just a little bit of evidence that we may be talking about the same parts of the brain here. Now, the next question is, if, in fact, social and physical pain share neurological systems, then there's some interesting implications. One implication might be that baseline sensitivity to physical pain would predict sensitivity to social rejection. People who tend to be more sensitive to physical pain might also be more sensitive to social rejection because the circuitry that is responsible for physical pain is also the same circuitry or similar circuitry as what's involved in the case of social rejection. So that's one thing. The other one was, would an experience that boosts social pain also boost the unpleasantness associated with physical pain? Because you would think that if you ratchet up those neurons that are responding to social pain, you might also see a ratcheting up of the physical pain experience.